Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Couple of Nukes. As always, I'm your host, Mr. Whiskey, and I realized that it looks like I'm wearing just a white t-shirt. I actually wore some merch from my favorite rapper, and it looks like I'm just wearing a white t-shirt like I'm bumming out, but it's actually from my favorite rapper because it ties into today's episode. I've had a lot of great guests on the show. I mean, a lot of very phenomenal people. But today's guest is someone I admire in particular, even slightly envious of, because if you haven't been following the show or my social medias or you knew whatever the case may be, you won't know this, but my ultimate goal in life is to be a conscious rapper and a rapper who talks about mental health and all that stuff. There's a big rise of that. There's still plenty of rappers that do the opposite. So, but yeah, we're here today with someone who, unlike me, so I've got the music videos done, I've got the lyrics done, I've got the beats done. I just don't have the vocals ready, and that could take forever. I'm trying to get lessons and all that, and by lessons I mean just anytime I can practice, I'm practicing, and I learn about vocal warm ups. I realize you can't just just start singing. You should warm up, especially if you're gonna be putting something online. But yeah, we're here with someone who has actually done all of that. I was listening to his music all day in preparation for this conversation, and it's great stuff. And we're gonna have the link in the description below so y'all can check out some of those songs. But yeah, Mr. Rich Vision, I'm so excited to have you here. Like I said, this is something I'm passionate about. Definitely something you're passionate about. So we're gonna get right into it, and we'll start with having you introduce yourself a little bit to us.
Thank you so much, Mr. Whiskey. It's such a privilege to be on your podcast. I am a recording artist slash author slash spoken word artist, and my main mission in life is to bridge the gap between music and mental health, and to remind other people that they are worthy to be here and not to resort to suicide. And a lot of my stories based on me feeling like I wasn't enough. So the things that I share in my messages in regards to my music and my poetry and my book is something that I needed to hear when I was going through my darker days of depression and fighting those suicidal thoughts.
Yeah, and like I said, I was listening to your music, and one of the words you mentioned a lot was gaslighting, which really hasn't become a buzzword until the past few years, although it's something that has been going on for a long time,
Yes.
and it stemmed from a British thriller, really, where this guy was turning down the gas lamps, and then the woman was saying, "Is there something wrong? The light's wrong." He's
Yes.
like, "No, it's all you," and that's how simple it
Yes.
is. But I've listened to your music, and I've also experienced gaslighting, and it can get much more complicated than that, much more abusive than that. It plays a great role in narcissism. People who are narcissistic are excellent at gaslighting and definitely enjoy it. And it goes into manipulation. All of that goes into mental health. And yeah, I really appreciate your lyrics. And so let's talk a
Thank
little
you.
bit more about whatever you're comfortable talking with, which is kind of you talk about suicidal ideation and battles with mental health. Let's start with where you were kind of born and raised and how that impacted everything.
Yeah, I mean, I was born in Bronx. I've been raised in Brooklyn pretty much all my life, and to be honest, when it comes to just where I'm at in general, it's just I thank God I didn't really struggle as far as like getting into like fights and things like that, which I'm grateful for. And I didn't grow up in a time where a lot of the things that a lot of people who are older experience a lot of things like violence and things like that in front of them. So I'm
Yeah.
grateful that I had I was able to not experience that, and I experienced my own struggles, mental struggles, not pertaining to particular environment, but it's just for me, like me putting myself out there really attributed to a lot of my mental health scares, because early on I was getting a lot of like feedback that was negative and destructive in regards to my music, and then I also internalized a lot of the stuff too, because I didn't have the wherewithal to be able to know, like, to or discern, this is somebody's opinion, not, my reality, and able to rewrite my own story versus adhering to what people thought of my music as trash or XYZ or not good enough, instead of owning my music as this is an expression of who I am and the expression of the moment that I'm present, that I'm living in at this present moment. And I started to, after that, to develop a strong sense of self after the fact that I was going through all those things with. backlash with overcoming those, mental hurdles with addressing criticism online as well.
Yeah, for sure. I know a lot of people get caught up in trying to appease others and conforming to society. And in fact, the shirt I'm wearing actually is from the God Mode rap from Tom McDonald. And it starts off, whether you like political music or not, that's the type he makes. But he goes, I've been hearing that they think my political music is boring. Tell them I'm sorry. I've been rapping about things that I feel are important. And that part right there, the things that I feel are important, because it's his music. And just like your
Yeah.
music is your music and my music will be my music,
Hmm.
really, just the same thing happens with writing when it comes to books, TV shows, whatever, even social media influencers. We get caught up in wanting to appease others and get more followers, and we forget that ultimately we're doing it for ourselves. And yeah, we want to entertain and educate along the way, but we want to do it our style and our way. And then we'll change up to try and reach more people. But sometimes it's so much more important to reach people the way you want to, reach the people you want to. Definitely with criticism, we live in a world where I've talked about it before. Social media is just so toxic. Now, it depends on the platform. It's interesting, believe it or not. The TikTok community is actually pretty supportive and positive. I've yet to find, I don't really have TikTok, but when my friends are using it, I rarely see any negative comments. Now, I am an Instagram user, and I gotta say, between that, now I haven't used Twitter, aka X, but I've heard those two are pretty much tied. And anytime I go to the Instagram comment section, it is just negative, hatred, sexual perversion, just. And I said, there's a difference between constructive criticism and just hating, just trolling, right? People were saying,
Yes.
hey, I love your music. I've been doing the same thing for a while. Here's how you could improve, or here's something like. And that's the thing.
Mm.
When you post online, typically the people who will help you are people who are actually successful, and the people who are
Right.
hating on you typically aren't. That's the sad part. It's
Hmm.
typically people who you know are at the same level or below you. And yeah, there's definitely a lot of, when you put yourself out online, you are opening yourself to the whole world. And unfortunately, we live in a world where there's a lot of good people and a lot of bad people. So let's start
Right.
with when you started writing music, where you discovered your
Mm.
passion for song creation.
Yeah, to be honest, it really started journaling when I was in, I would say like middle school. I just started introduced in school about journaling, how my day went. And for me, just the fact of like I was able to be expressive, I didn't know how much healing that did for me and how cathartic it was to be able to express myself and to allow myself to go to those, even if it wasn't like a deep thought per se, it was just like expressing like how the day went. Like for
Right.
me, that did something for me mentally that I feel like I wasn't stimulated in that from that regard before.
Hmm.
So I started just exploring that curiosity of, hey, maybe this could be something. I started working on writing raps and poetry first, and soon later on, I started to really get excited about those things. And then I started this like, hey, maybe I can write, rap over a beat or something. And I just started just to, play around with certain ideas. And, for me, it was just like the whole exploration of the craft, just mesmerized by it. And I was like, this is something here that's healing me. I'm like, let me continue.
Yeah.
And then it got to the point where I'm like, hey, I can turn this into a song, and I, not realizing it, and I started, these books pages that I'm just free writing, about my day and just life. I just thought, I'm like, oh my goodness, like there's so much material in here that I could just turn this into a song, and then they started to take shape, and then I went into a school that they had, that my sister introduced me to, that had a vocal coach, and then they had like a studio also in the same building. And she was like, oh, maybe take vocal lessons and things like that. I was like, okay, try it out. And then I ended up getting into the studio and doing some original songs there. And then after that, I made it my mission to go into a college for audio engineering. And I did some songs in their studio as well. And then I just started building my catalog after I started just getting my foot into those places where I can just like record my music for the first time, not really experienced as a recording artist, just figuring it out as I went, not really having a blueprint, and then it just started to branch off from there.
Yeah, and I know I highly encourage everyone who likes writing poetry to check out rapping. When we hear rapper, we think it's got to be super fast, or some of us are thinking mumble rap, or we're thinking, or even this negative stereotype that you have to be black to rap, that no one else can rap. There's a
Yeah.
lot of different barriers around it. And what I'll say is, you know, you are a conscious rapper, which for people who don't know what that means, it's more like
Yeah.
you're rapping about mental health and change. You're meant to educate and promote something good, whereas other rap uh, primarily is about the club, drugs, cars, money, right? And I follow a lot of conscious rappers who are against that stuff because they're promoting teenagers, encouraging them to do awful things. In fact, I highly encourage
Mm.
everyone. I'll have in a description below.
Oh,
"Blame the Rappers" by Tom McDonald featuring Dax talks about the effect our music does change lives. I mean, music is very powerful, and I've had some friends who are
yes.
like, "Oh, music is nothing." I said, music is one of those things that it can completely change your mood like that. I mean, you could be having a
Yes.
great day and you hear a sad song that makes you think of something, and suddenly you're just in your feelings, or vice versa.
Yes.
I mean, it is so powerful. And think about song lyrics. I mean, there are people with Alzheimer's and dementia who don't remember, some of their grandkids or even their kids, but a song comes on and they know every word. They know every word
Yeah.
from 1980. It's music is very powerful. I got songs from childhood that I haven't listened to in a decade and a half here, and then they come on in the radio, and I'm like, how do I know every word? It's so
Yep.
beautiful, that
Mm.
connection.
Mm.
And my point was gonna get into is two rappers that I really like who are conscious rappers, Ivan B and NF. They're
Enough.
yeah, they're like, my point
Oh.
being that you don't have to rap fast to impress, right? You don't have to be very musically talented, which they are, by the way, but they do a more storytelling, a more slower style, more talk
Mm.
rap, and I love it. I enjoy it. Even like Johnny Cash isn't a rapper, but he'll do storytelling with his songs, and it's still. I mean, everyone knows Johnny Cash pretty much. He's still a legend, right? And his old songs used to tell a story in
Mm.
chronological order, and there are plenty of rappers and other song writers and singers who do that. So I just want to say, because Rich, you mentioned about writing and writing being an outlet, and it really
Yes.
is. And I highly encourage everyone. I've had a lot of great guests who say if when you put pen to paper, it releases. It's different when you see it, when you release it. Same for me. I love writing poetry. I love writing fiction. I love writing nonfiction, not so much. The fiction and the songs kind of put a little layer between y'all. But when you do the nonfiction, it's like, all right, this is too personal now.
Yeah.
But yeah, we talk about, so if you're a poet, I highly, just put a beat to your poem. Most poetry people like to rhyme. I'm not a big fan of non-rhyming poetry. I'm sorry, I just can't do it, but I love poetry that rhymes. You just put a beat to it and you can start there. And you might find that you like it even more. So I highly encourage everyone to try writing a little bit. So we're just getting back to you, and you started writing, and
Yes.
then you talk about audio engineering, kind of getting a space to record, and then where was the first time? Actually, let's start with what was your first song? Your first, obviously, you wrote plenty of ideas and songs here and there, but what was the first one that you locked in on and you were like, this is going to be my first song? This is the one I want to focus on?
Yeah, that's a good question. When I first started doing my I when I first started, it was a couple of songs that I had. I don't remember. I think the song was about just overcoming just like this kind of like one of those overcoming songs of resiliency. I think it was called Go Hard or something like that. It was kind of like just I think it was kind of like a title that wasn't really formulated with much forethought. It was just like that was the name of the beat, so I kind of just left it. But I think really the most powerful song from the first project that I put out which is my EP called Set in Stone, which I released wow in 2015, which was so long ago. And the song called My Only Option. That's like one of my only songs that I had three verses on there. And it's about me just, overcoming those inner demons and those naysayers that say I'm not enough or I'm not, gonna be a rapper or amount to anything as a rapper. So I was just kind of like
Right.
speaking to that side of things. And when I had the inspiration of the song, I thought about those because I was at a time and space where I had a tendency of screenshotting a lot of the stuff that people were saying to me. For some reason, I didn't know why I did it at the time, but I held on to a lot of that for so long of like, and I would always put it away and put it in the folder, and I would look at this stuff, and I'm like, man, like I guess I wanted to prove to them that I was always enough, but I also had to prove to myself that I was enough to be a recording artist, and I think that's the most important thing to for me to realize is that I always been enough. I just needed to. Sometimes it just took other people to kind of bring that out of me, so to speak, and me realizing that within myself by putting out those records that remind me like yeah, my only option is to shine, like, and it was just one of those catchy songs that I just kind of just like fell in love with because it really brought me back to the reason why I was doing it, which is to help
Right.
other people realize their worth.
Right. And we talked already about how there's so much negativity in the world. There's so many awful comments online, and you could definitely look at them and just shut down and be like, I'm not doing this. This is stupid. This is a waste of time. Or you can hold on to them and use that as fuel for self improvement. And, I'll show them and all of that. And it's definitely great to use that as fuel and to also take it with a grain of salt and ignore it to some degree because people are, listen, I've had content out there. It could be a genuine piece of advice that applies to everyone, and people will still just dislike it to dislike it. People are just intent on spreading hate. So I appreciate you, still doing what you do. It takes a lot, and I think especially in this online industry, those first, weeks, months, maybe even years are the roughest where you're just figuring
Yeah.
everything out, developing your voice, developing your music style, developing your online presence. So it's definitely hard to get over that. And then still hard as you get through that. Now, we just went over, your first kind of project. What are you working on right now, coming up in the future, or anything that just released in terms of your music?
Yes, I have a song that, well, it's still pretty new called I Am Enough Yes As I Am. And that song is a powerful record that I wrote when I was, thinking about again, some of the things I was told, but also um thinking about like what it means like to actually accept who I am as a person, and also as an artist because for a long time I shrunk back my purpose and I played really small. I hung my head like I was a nobody. I walked in the room like I didn't belong there. And so I wrote it in that space where it's telling myself that, I needed to hear that like someone saying to me like you're enough, yes you are, don't care less, if everybody nobody understands, hey, I care less about what they don't understand about my self-worth because I know within me I am worthy and I've always been worthy, and that's what that song is about. And what I am working on is getting another single out, and the single is about people who are in a space mentally where they feel like they want to hold everything in within themselves. And it's a song called I don't keep it to myself. It's coming out very, very soon. I'm working on getting the edits back from my producer. And I fell in love with the record because I'm like, man, like so many times I'm like, I wish I would have told somebody how I was feeling,
Yeah.
and I would have not been so damn depressed, lonely in my room, and succumbing to vices like, drinking and things like that to numb the pain, or watching pornography. Just like all these things to escape. And I'm like, well, I'm like, man, like, and then I also realized that it was by me actually vocalizing like I needed help, like I'm not okay, is really what helped me to like stay here, like, to today, like, because I've had times where I'm like, I'm not gonna make it, and I had to reach out to someone to hold space for me when I couldn't hold space for myself. So I'm happy about that song coming out soon because it's I know it's gonna change the game for mental health music in general because it's gonna really show, dictate a different narrative, because out there the narrative is don't tell nobody your secrets, keep everything to yourself. Like you're supposed to be a man, man up, take it to the chin. I hear all of this BS. I'm like, that's not the narrative. That's a false narrative. What about we changing the narrative and say, hey, I am worthy to get the help I deserve, which is the reason why I am reaching out because I want to be here for my legacy. I want to be here for my family. That's the thing. And that's what I want people to get out of the song when I release it. Is like, hey, you may say, I need to keep it to myself, but I'm not going to keep it to myself because I have someone to live for. So that's what I'm working on is putting out music that has a message that people could not only relate to, could really change their psyche a bit. Because
Right.
I'm a little bit tired of the same, like you to your point, the same trash music that's killing the youth. I'm over it. Over sexualized,
Mm-hmm.
too much gory violence, and it's just so much perversion. And I'm like, I'm at a point where I'm like, I'm the CEO of my life, so I'm able to share exactly what I go through and change the scope of the industry by speaking about these things that some people are not. Because if I'm not the agent for change, who will be?
Yeah, and you mentioned a bit of stoicism, holding in your emotions there, and that kind of stuff. And I just gotta say, another shameless plug for an artist I like, ladies and gentlemen. If you haven't heard Dax, he has a song "To Be a Man" and "Real Man."
Mm.
I mean, captures the. If you're a man specifically, I mean, it really captures that. And like you said, devastating consequences to holding everything in, and you've got people here you gotta take care of, including yourself. And very beautiful. And ladies and gentlemen, it doesn't have to be rap, right? If
Yeah.
you can bring about change with any music genre, I mean,
Yes.
whether it's pop or rock or whatever else out there. I mostly just listen to rap and country. So whatever else is out there that I don't know about, there's a lot of genres. There's a lot of genres, and you can always bring something back that's been dead for a while too. That's always a great thing to have. But yeah, Rich, I really appreciate everything you just said there. I
Absolutely.
think it's so
Thank you.
important that we try to bring about change, a good change. Our music can either affect people in a negative way or a positive way, and we want to help them, like you said, overly perverted and a lot of consumerism, telling you to buy this, to buy that. So I really appreciate the reason I like country music because I know a lot of people listen to country music and they think, oh, it's just about pickup trucks and it's just about
Hmm.
the Chevy and the mud and all that. There's plenty of that and plenty of beer, but there's a lot of good family more, a lot of family centered music within that industry, and that's important. The rap, most of it is about going out by yourself and hanging out with people that you never see again, whereas a lot of country stuff, it's more small town family oriented stuff. So I think that's the importance. But yeah, I really appreciate that, and we're looking forward to that song release. Like you said, it sounds like it's something you're really pouring your heart into, and I think it's a great thing. And just speaking of, well, actually, I want to go back. You're kind of talking about feeling like a nobody and all that, and I'm just gonna help hype you up here to everyone, ladies and gentlemen. Please pay attention to this because, Rich, if I'm not mistaken, you've actually been featured in some radio, some magazines, and obviously that external validation doesn't necessarily matter. If you don't feel good enough, you don't feel good
Yeah.
enough. I get that, but I do want to hype you up a little bit here. Tell us a little bit about you've been featured in the radio and magazines. I mean, that's some awesome stuff right there.
No, I really do appreciate that because there's been times where I was just thinking like, what, man, why I'm not getting the opportunities, and it's these, but about the thing about that is I was also persistent in regards to my approach. Like I'm getting on this, radio station, and I'm getting on this blog. I was really
Right.
putting in the work to get to those spaces where I'm like, okay, I finally have someone who's like genuinely interested in featuring me and my music and things like that, or see value in what I'm doing and putting out, which I'm grateful for because I don't take for granted anyone who is taking the time to, because there's so many artists out there,
Yeah.
and they can pick anybody else to feature. So when I get featured, especially on a radio station, and my music is playing, it just means a lot because it just shows that they are here for the music. They really
Right.
are. So that is, greatly appreciated. And, moments like that, I just remind myself that, it isn't about really the accolades. I just want people to know that, when they listen to my music, that they could get a sense of, who they are and who they can become and, their full potential and that, they don't have to succumb to, outside criticism or, external validation or all of that. Like you said, the consumerism stuff, like they could feel worthy within themselves and really hold deep, onto that sentiment because that's what really that's my core and my why is to allow some people to realize that, you know, the society may not accept me, but I accept me for who I am. So yeah, I really appreciate that.
Yeah, and we've talked about a lot of great things, and before we close off here, I definitely want to get to your book, From Victim to Victor. You mentioned writing songs and all that, but that's not where your skills end. Writing books is also involved in that, and you actually have yours, which I just named. So tell us about
Yes.
that.
Yes, my book is called From Victim to Victor, Transforming Trauma into Triumph. This poetry book is about my mental health journey throughout the past several years, especially during the pandemic where my mental health was extremely challenged. And also, I also talk about a near suicide attempt that I had during the pandemic in the book as well. So this is a book about just like my self-discovery journey in regards to my self-worth and regards to my healing from getting mentally abused. Also, while in the pandemic, by a music mentor of mine that I had a falling out with. So this
Mm,
book is powerful because it's not only pieces of my story and my soul, it's, there's also resources in the back of the book of hotline numbers that, that you can call if you need help, 98, like, or, I don't know
right,
if
right.
98 is on it, but all these other numbers in the book to remind you like you can get the support that you deserve. And I wanted to add that as a little extra to so people, because I know sometimes people don't really know who to reach out to. They think that they don't have sources, right, available. So I wanted to make sure that they know that as well. I also have a bookmark that says I am victorious because my past does not define me. That
Amen.
was powerful for me to just like add that as like something that people can just see and remind people like, oh wow, like I'm not a victim, I am victorious and my past doesn't define me. So, like I just want people to read the book, because I want people to really dive deep into their own healing journeys of the traumas that they've been through and that hey, it's not all gonna be good, but at the same time it's like it takes time. It takes time to heal, it takes time to process mental trauma. It's not overnight. But if you take those tiny steps day by day, journal, meditate, go to the gym, like do something where, your mind doesn't have to worry about all the extra, stress in life. Life is already stressful enough. And, I've been through a lot of stress and by me taking the time to do those little things, they add up and my mental health has been better because I decided to go back into therapy. I decided to write a song. I decided to, all these coping strategies that I learned over time. And this, I feed my mind positive stuff. And I just want to remind you, if you're listening, that, your worth is in your own hands. You don't have to, have someone dictate your self-worth because again, you are the CEO of your life. So you determine whether or not your life is a hit or a flop. And all that to say is, you could rewrite a whole different story. You don't have to live that old story no more because that old story does not serve you in today's world.
Yeah. Your life is your life and your music is your music. And ladies and gentlemen, you'll definitely have to follow Rich Vision in case he and I
Yes.
collaborate on a rap together in the future. We will
That'd be
see
dope.
about that. I gotta get my
Yeah.
vocals caught up to his. But yeah, ladies and gentlemen, we're gonna have all his music in the description below.
Yeah.
It's I definitely encourage y'all to check it out. I mean, I like I said, I was listening to all of it before we got on the call today, and I love it. I really love that kind of music. And if you've never gone into the conscious rapping industry or really gotten into that type of music before, I would highly recommend it. One of the things we love the most about music is relatability, is about, the realism. I mean, it depends who you are. A lot of times, the reason that people really like the other side of rapping is because they're like, wow, imagine I was just going around shooting people and popping pills and dancing at the club, right? Some people get caught up in fantasy, but for me, I really like the grounded music. And knowing, like, Rich, you're a real dude. I know you're a real dude because I'm here
Thank
talking
you.
it with you about this stuff. Your music says it because it's real. It's stuff that I can relate to and appreciate, and that I can reflect upon my life as well and bring about change. So I really appreciate what you do. So, ladies and gentlemen, be sure in the description below, we're going to have all of that stuff to check it out. And yeah, Rich, just thank you so much for coming on the show. I appreciate it.
Yeah, I appreciate you too, man. This is a powerful interview, so I greatly appreciate you.
Sailing through the ocean blue, nuclear reactors my crew, guiding the ship, the stars as our guide. Through the waves we ride, jokes and laughter fill the air. On this voyage we have to share, working together, side by side. As one family we will abide. In the heart of the ship we reside, nuclear operators with pride, powering the vessel with every stride. Our mission a source of great pride.